So let's get started on some announcements. So the community challenge for February, might be for March/February, is up. I've written it for you. I put a lot of my creative energy in there, and the vote passed for the bow. The ancient bow is the theme for our next challenge. Announcement: the ancient bow is the theme. That is the, if you guys didn't get it like out of the writing that it was supposed to be a bow, it's a bow. To get your copy of the resource pack, just go to the community tab over here. So the announcement is right there on the wall. To get to the wall, just go to istebrak.com and click on the little Google Plus icon. Join, read the rules. But to get your portrait studio manual, you can also find it here in the community. Okay, but the manual is out. If you don't know how to use Portrait Studio, if you're having trouble with it, it's over here. But the resource pack is right here, the Ancient Weapon Character Design Challenge. Okay, so I'm just downloading that for you. Just drag, extract, and then open it up. So take a good look at your inspirational images. These images help display to you exactly what I'm looking for. So you have a lot of creative liberty here, and I want to make sure that you guys are not under the impression that I'm only after specifically an Aztec culture. It's something a little bit more fantasy. So it is based, of course, off Aztec culture, Aztec language, and I have included a couple of blade pictures. So useless son of a bitch. Why aren't my pictures opening up anymore? What is this? Photos. Stupid ass. So I've included a number of little I guess texture inspirational images here. I've also included a couple blades. There's no reason why your bow can't be accessorized with some sort of blade edge. They are a mythical legend after all, a character of legend. Alright, so I've included some examples of what I expect out of a blue glow. Lots of texture inspiration. Maybe an example of how I would want to see the rendering done, because you also have to have a character, so I've minimalized kind of what I expect out of the bow. The bow shouldn't be the focus of the detail. It's a character plus an ancient weapon. The ancient weapon is the character, with a bow to characterize them. Lots of little texture inspiration here for gold. There's going to be a massive gold theme running through this story. I'm not sure if I want to read the thing for you guys. It's very, very long. Who wants me to read the brief? Just press the word 1. Just write 1 back at me. Whoever wants me to read the brief. So this is a good example of Aztec culture, how they were dressed. I'm not sure what's going on here. But these are really, really good examples of what I would want to see. Even if it's just shaman specific, you can go ahead and do whatever you want, just as long as you stay close to the character's written design. Visual design is different from written design. As long as the written design isn't written in stone, it's done. But the visual stuff, that's where you get to be a little bit more creative. Alright, so, okay, you guys want me to read it? No, it's not stressed at all. Not at all. So I'll read it for you. Okay, enjoy. I'm not sure if I can read it. It's very, very long. It's story time, I guess. So shuffle up. Deep in the ancient jungles surrounding Chichen Itza, a jaguar awoke and witnessed an omen. The jaguar ran to the great owl and said, "Great owl, I have seen it. I have seen the shadow of the great tree disappear into the earth, and from beneath it crawled a serpent." The great owl heard the jaguar's report, and they both made journey forth to find the watchful sea turtle. And there she was, among the gulls upon a cliff, watching over the cliff for clouds once promised to rise from beneath the sea. Great Ayoitl. I'm still not decided how I want to pronounce that. Otl. I've read it. I've read it somewhere how to pronounce it, but I got it wrong. Otl. I'm just going to say Otl. Great Otl, the jaguar has seen an omen. I have heard. These gulls have been singing all morning, she replied. Owl, send for the shaman and tell him to inform the nearest king that Allah Akkad will be needed. Tell him that a son must be chosen from the king's family, and he must wield the bow in the war to come. This omen cannot be the one Otel, replied the owl. The king only has a daughter, and his daughter has but one arm, born maimed and a cripple 18 years before today. This omen must not be as we have seen it. From the sand, the great old turtle shook its feet and stood high. Go and inform the king. The weaknesses of mortal men are nothing in the eyes of gods, for fate does not change pace for those of weaker limb. The owl informed the king, and there the king shook and cried in great pain for his only daughter Yaretsi. In this Yaretsi stood forth and vowed to wield the weapon, from this the owl carried her by her one arm and took her to Mictlan, to the underworld, as the sobs of her father fell into silence. The great owl called Yaretsi to claim her bow and return to fight against the enemy of her ancestors, the great evil dressed in mirrors with eyes like the sky. The court shaman Sahagun had just had enough of babysitting children. He enjoyed seeing the scattered court children gather together, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, listening to the great tales. Among them, shuffled most forward in front of the children, was the princess Atala, listening, holding her toy bow with her right hand, and with her other hand, the one missing a thumb, she held her toy arrow. None know how great Princess Yaretsi wielded the bow, continued Sahagun, with but one arm, and when she returned from the underworld after her training, she was as a goddess descended from the stars, her great bow glowing blue with a burning light, as if a blue star was caught inside its sinews. One day the great red evil dressed in mirrors will come back again, and the bow, stringed and smithed in the underworld, will send another serpent messenger from under the earth to call a warrior forth again to defend the 9 kingdoms. He finished with a clap and some sparkling rock dust. The children screamed with enjoyment and danced and laughed, falling on each other in triumph, some stomping and growling, imitating the jaguar, some as the serpent dancing on the floor, some shooting invisible arrows, and some pretending to die a most hilarious death. The princess stayed seated on the floor, legs crossed, staring at the sparkling dust, looking down at her arrow in her thumbless hand. She hid it beneath her robe as her father taught her. Just behind Sahagun, welded under the arch of the great balcony, was the ancient weapon, Ala Akkad, leaning slightly as it stood on one end. None had seen its legendary glow in 100 years, green with aged moss and dust. It was long unstringed, a great leaning arch, casting its shadow upon the hall. It was rusted and not easy to polish, and none dared touch it. It was mostly a nuisance for those who lived in the temple, and in the way of the priests as they charted stars late into the night. During the early hours of the morning, however, through the moss, the detail beneath the dust could be seen with more clarity. A strange jade-like blue glow would reflect the sun back through the dust, as well as the faint yellow glow of gold sparkling through. So keep that in mind. You don't have to necessarily paint it dusty, but you can definitely keep what's shining through to the dust in mind when you're designing it after it's been wielded. Sahagun saw the princess eyeing the great bow behind him, far taller than she at 8 years old. The great Princess Yaretsi rested it there the day she died, for she was shot down by the great evil in its moment of defeat. As you can tell, I'm pulling a lot of inspiration from Avatar, Last Airbender. Atala nodded at Sahagun with turned head, yet eyes still fixed on the bow. In her eyes, Sahagun saw Atala look upon the ancient bow the way one looks upon their kin after a great absence. Yaretsi was beautiful, they say. Upon mentioning this, Atala turned to listen intently to Sahagun. Sahagun smiled and continued, "Sorry, that's my dryer," sitting beside Atala on the platform's edge to face the princess. Her hair was long, longer even than yours, and dark like a starless evening. When she returned from the heavens, her eyes shone with the same mysterious glow as her great bow. Her favorite color was green, and she wore the great pendant of the royal crest, proudly shining gold around her neck. Some say when she returned from the heavens, she came back with a new arm, one that moved strangely, as if the gods moved it with strings. So think something mechanical, or some weird technology, or some pulley system, or something like that. Her aim was unrivaled, her stamina unlike any other, climbing as high on the treetops as the great owl, watchful and waiting as Otel, and unheard and quiet as the black jaguar. Many times Sahagun had caught Atala staring at this bow. Atala used to trace it with her fingers when the hall was empty, and all were asleep when the sun was highest in the sky, drawing it again on her scrolls. One could tell it was not an art or design seen before on other ancient bows or weapons, and any design seen hung on the temple walls or on the great halls of the kings. It was a quick and jagged design, curled but straight, and beneath the jade-like surface it seemed like the bow was hollow, as if a blue blood once coursed through it, an ancient technology none had seen before. So if I haven't laid it in enough, that last line should help. An ancient technology. So I really want you guys to imagine that. This is quite a big challenge because I promised I was going to push forth, more high fantasy based narrative. That's why I wrote more of an excerpt from something from a larger world. So expect more stuff like that in the challenges. Patrons are going to be part of this challenge as well. They're going to get their own dedicated critique hour at the end of every month concerning this challenge. I hope you guys are enjoying what I'm writing. I'm having a lot of fun kind of creating a little bit of a world here. So basically, you can make it an illustration, a book cover type illustration, or you can make it a simple grayscale background character design. And let's read through that. Use the resource pack to complete your design based on the inspirational images folder. Submit a mood board that includes your gesture and silhouette experimentation. So if you don't send in drafts of what you're experimenting with, how she's going to stand, what the bow is going to look like silhouette wise, what the environment might look like if you're going to choose to do an environment. So please also include at least 3 experimental thumbnail paintings for the background, should you choose to include one. So a background can be like a forest scene, it can be the temple scene, it cannot be a narrative, like it has to be a standing gesture, so I'm going to talk about that here. Remember, these are character designs, so take your time to think about breathing room and the motion of the gesture lines and what they say about the character's personality, role, and trope. This is a big one. Please use variations of standing gestures only, no extreme posing of any kind. So no jumping, drop kicking, flipping around and doing some crazy stuff. It's not a battle scene. It is a standing gesture. You may pose the character aiming with the bow, but no extreme squatting or lunging, bending, crouching, or rear view poses. The camera must face the front of your character, using only applicable standing gestures. This is not a turnaround based character design layout. You can have a floaty moment if you want, magic floaty avatar time, but nothing, no extreme crazy gestures. So no arms like out in like a screaming pose of like the power has taken over type pose. The final submission must be a fully rendered image in full color. So the character must be fully rendered. The background is optional. So the background can be a gray-white value, or it can be a fully rendered environment. Please use a book cover style canvas, vertical with at least 6 by 9 inches, or a variation or a larger version of these dimensions. Please remember it to have enough breathing room on all poles of the canvas. All right. Make sure you're posting a working sheet. Including your experimental gestures and thumbnails a working sheet including your experimental gestures and thumbnails must be uploaded with your final draft before the due date. If it's not uploaded, it doesn't have to be the same canvas. It can be just uploaded with the same post. The common thread between these challenges is to put you in a workplace environment where your art and design skills are tested and limited by design requirements. So please read this brief carefully. So that's why I've decided to read it to you guys. Make sure you guys are reading through it. I don't want weird robot characters posted that is a male that has that is African. We did not go with any specific any other culture other than Aztec. I don't want to see some sort of medieval Anglo-Saxon weapon wielder. Okay, I'm aiming for something very specific here, and if you're not ready to join this challenge or follow its rules, don't join it. So that's it. Work hard, have fun, and I wanted to make its own dedicated video for this, but I think this is just as good as any other platform for me to announce this. All of these are just setups that you guys have an easy time remembering where I'm pulling all of this from, though you do have the narrative. You have the creative liberty to pull from different, because I've included the term technology, ancient technology. I've said, mechanics and pulleys and all that. So that's why I've included so many metallic kind of patterns and texture inspiration. So let's see any Aztec centaur. So I'm going to close this up and just take a look at some of your questions. So, yes, I wrote this. No gore, I already asked. Hi, Levi. Were you an English major? Because this is some nice stuff. Yes, I was. I took English and professional writing at school. Thank you very much. I'm happy your parent enjoys my voice. All right, let's see. I'm so sorry I had to read all of that too. That was probably a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you, Potato. I hope I get better too. So as the final submission, we should be presenting the character holding the bow. Yes, absolutely. So you can pose it with the character. You can, if you want, have it on the side, but I don't know why you would want to pose her without the bow. It could be something, you know, strung over her shoulder. She could be holding it in such a way. She doesn't have to be wielding the bow. She doesn't have to be pulling. I don't know what it's called when you pull the bow or I don't know, fill the bow's belly. I don't know what it's called. It's called something. So there's a term for it, for when you like actually put the arrow in the bow and you're ready to strike. But it doesn't have to be that specific gesture. So does her arm have to include literal strings? So I did mention that her arm is missing. She is armless. She came back with a new arm. So think wormtail type arm, but you know, not an evil piece of shit. So, you know, think like mechanics, think the gods made her. Clearly the gods here are aliens, all right? I love ancient aliens. I pull from that inspiration a lot. So clearly the gods, quote unquote, are just like watchful, kind of like Mount Olympus type gods. They're not actual gods. So they give her what she needs. And that's that. Nothing that excessively mystical, but there is a lot of mysticism involved. The great owl could have been one big mechanical beast. You don't know. The turtle could have been a guy. Or you know, a woman, an old woman that just looked old. They call her the turtle. So all of this has metaphorical aspects to it, and some of it is literal. And you as the designer are the one who is responsible for this. So I can't hold your hand throughout the entire design process. This is world building. So this is something that you are supposed to be equipped with. These are concepts that you're supposed to be exploring out of what your imagination, or what they pull, inspire out of your imagination. Even if you don't know how to do this, this is where you learn how to do it, by trying. So if you feel like this is not in your capacity to try, if you feel like your skill set isn't there, try anyways. All right. Geez, what happened? I was listening to the story and fell asleep. Have you seen the Ancient Robots? The Ancient Robots, a lot of that has inspired me, as well as some of the Breath of the Wild has inspired me. Breath of the Wild has a lot of that Aztec, Mayan type of ancient South American type aesthetic flow. So let's get into our critique hour. So if you like these, if you want to be part of the private patron Discord, then all you have to do is just go to Patreon and join as an apprentice, and you'll be able to be a part of this challenge, but on a much closer kind of like focused study group. And that's patrons join public challenges, but once those are done, I assign other challenges as well specific to them. Some are studies, some are creatively driven like this, but I want everyone to be involved in this. That's why I have it overlap both the patron group and the public group. But Patreon is where you can go to support even just as a watcher, so you can get more of this stuff in the future. Hopefully we can do this every other month, or every month maybe, or every like 2 weeks we have a vote, or maybe votes can take only a week if we get enough people voting and we hit 500. So my new benchmark is that we have to hit 500 votes for me to get a challenge like this out there, and we have to have at least a month for people to work on it. So if we can get at least 6 this year, that'll be really cool. I'm sure we're going to be able to do more than that. But this is the first one for 2018. I hope you guys are enjoying these, and I'm going to get into the critique hour now. All right, so let's go into this. My biggest problem recently, both in private practice and public, looking through people's 14-day challenges, and I don't think I've spent enough time on this either, is the pupil size. So I'll critique some 14-day challengers today, but I'm going to talk about the pupil size. A lot of you, I'm sorry, one second. Okay, so a pupil size, you guys are always like kind of drawn to the fact that, please focus on class, guys, mods. you have to be able to address the fact that you started art out of anime or something really similar to it. So your perception of what is a functional pupil isn't actually based on realism. So enlarging contacts. Okay. So a lot of you can't be blamed for thinking that this is normal. And a lot of you draw like this. But when you paint with this kind of size, you escape that ridiculous, this is not edited, this is just makeup. You escape that, I think it is edited, no it's not. Yeah, you escape this horrific kind of, I don't know what to call it, just this quicksand of what you perceive as beautiful. And when we think about what these pupils are, you know, going through, one looks more realistic and one just looks horrific. Obviously, this has been enlarged. This has been enlarged and this has been shrunken just for the thumbnail. This is ridiculous. Please, I don't know why they thought this was okay to do, because just look at the white of the eyes. But this is an exaggeration, of course, of the difference. If I were to get liquefy and correct it, I'd probably be able to show you exactly what it is. But I think this one is the better one right over here. No, it's not. She's not wearing contacts. This is good. The more realistic eye has, the more believable realism to it, the more functional realism. A lot of you are painting with this enlarged pupil and it needs to stop because it's looking cheap, it's looking cheesy, it's in bad taste, it's looking like this forced need to be, you know, part of this doll-like hybrid anime, pseudo-anime movement that's been going around, and it's not a sign of some sort of prestigious understanding of human anatomy. I would rather my students start with the normal pupil size and enlarge thereafter. There is an amazing, endless amount of realism to be kind of explored with the smaller pupil size. The smaller pupil size can be used for older characters, for more evil characters. The more, in fact, the more you hide of the white of the eye, the more evil it looks, for me at least. I've learned to develop that taste because you're hiding the white of the eyes. It may seem cute to you. Of course, they are pulling from the baby proportions that we're used to seeing, but this eye here looks less cheesy and in more taste if I were to paint this than if I were to see this in some kind of art. Also, you can always just go in the middle, somewhere in the middle. But you guys are always pulling from the final end as if it's going to make up for your lack of form, for your lack of good edge work, for your lack of realism and lack of skill. Drawing a large pupil doesn't make the eye look prettier or make up for your form issues. So drawing a large pupil doesn't make up for your lack of skill, and you should write that back to me. And write it in your notes. These are the kind of stuff I want to see at the end of every month, all these notes. I'm going to go through every one of these. I am going to correct some other stuff involved in these, but I really just need to get this out there. This is like an epidemic along with line dependency, and I think for the most part, my conquest against the line, my crusade has worked. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but a lot less line dependency in our community, is there not? So this is something else I want to get out there. This is something else I want everyone else to notice. Stop drawing the large pupil. Use it only. Let me ask you, when is a good time to use a large pupil? And I'll go through your suggestions and see whether or not this is right. When is a good time to use a large pupil? So there are some questions. Dennis, you can actually message me on Facebook. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Dennis Tomlin. You can message me on my Facebook group. So, on cat people. An alien. Sorry, not pupil, the iris. I'm so sorry. Pupil, iris, same thing, honestly. I you know, mix them together. So, pupil and iris. Using a large pupil for children. Yeah, I just want to clarify. I said pupil. I am constantly saying back and forth. Iris is the larger piece. Pupil is the small little black dot. I meant iris. Drawing a large iris does not make up for your lack of skill, does not mask your skill. Beautiful. I'm so sorry. That's the iris. So large irises can work on a cartoon character if the whites are also larger. Old people, no, absolutely not. When you're drawing an old person, you want to minimize the beauty and saturate the ogre in the like kind of the setup of how you want to display beauty. If it's a particularly beautiful, sweet old lady, you can enlarge her eyes, you can squint her eyes, you can give her smiley eyes, but do not make up for the lack of smiley eyes and other muscle use because you included a pupil, and that's all. It's just going to look like a really freaky but beautiful but quiet and still haunted old lady. You want to make an old lady look like she's sweet. You don't always have to enlarge her iris and her pupil. You can just make her have the smiley cheeks, make her have big, you know, blushy Santa, Mrs. Santa cheeks, and you know, Mrs. Claus, whatever. And you can make up for it with other design units instead of just depending on one really, really overused, rehashed, annoying, cheesy, in bad taste, beginner-looking excuse for what's acceptable and cute. Okay. So someone who was squeezed really hard and their eyes are bulging out. At that point, Tom, the eyeball is more visible, not necessarily the pupil. But if you want to give that like stretch feeling in animation, then yes. Crying, absolutely, really good job, Samsa. Yeah, crying is a good one, but don't enlarge it too much. So a lot of people who here has noticed, and write one back at me, who here has noticed that their characters always look like they're crying and they have no idea why? All right, I had that for the longest time. I'm like, why do my characters look like they're crying all the time? And then I realized the pupil doesn't have to be this like this global size. It can be something a little bit more modest, and I can make up for what I don't have in pupil size with eyelid visibility or eye tilt, the inner corners being down to make up for the beauty. There's so many other ways that you can make the eye look beautiful without enlarging the pupil and the iris. Yes, you get a gold star. So the girl that we are designing, do we have to make her cartoony or somewhat realistic? I always aim for realistic. That's what I mean by render. Children and stylistic paintings. Stylistic, yeah, like if you mean the Big Eye the painting series, yes, definitely. When you can sell the painting, it's okay to use big eyes. See the film Big Eyes. There we go, Tom. Yeah. Yep, exactly. It's because the highlights sometimes enlarge and the dilated pupil, exactly. So those who have, so I said write one back to me if you have experienced that your paintings have that, feel like they're crying. And just, I need to know. So a lot of artists don't know exactly how to remedy this dependency on the large iris and the large pupil. Just, it's simple. First and foremost, sometimes you guys not only have a large pupil, but you've got this, not iris, sorry, not pupil, iris. Not only do you have a large iris, but you have this wobbly shape to it. Okay, so you eyeball it, and it just looks like a big wobbly iris, and like an even wobblier pupil that's kind of offset. And then you got all this sparkle, and then you've got the eye, and it just looks like the wobble of something that is underwater. It just looks like it's always wobbling. This is exactly what the Ghibli style does when a character is crying those humongous tears. It's such a cute, weird quirk of animation, but whatever, we love it. This needs to stop because it's showing a sign of a crutch, and whenever you have anything that is close to being diagnosed a crutch or is half a crutch, pay more attention to it. So this painting here, I'm actually going to leave this for later because I have better examples over here of what happens when you guys enlarge these. So I'm fixing the light environment really quickly. That's a lot of highlight and sparkle on her forehead, which means she is dark. She's dark-skinned, but doesn't mean her environment has to be dark-skinned. Her environment is just whatever it is in order to reflect that this much light has reached her forehead against the background. The background's also getting a little bit of light as well if that's how much has reached her forehead. So we're gonna get rid of all of this with a nice mid-tone value. Eyes are not white. Remember, they are a gray. If they were white, they'd glow. White is only given to character, things that are a light source. So a lot of you, that the sad thing, why I'm focusing on this today, is because you guys know how to draw eyes. You guys are doing a really, really good job with the eyeball shape. But because we haven't really ever discussed this, you don't know that you're doing a good job. You don't know that you're drawing a really, really well-drawn eye. Apart from the excessive shadows, I mean, you do have other problems here, this specific artist. So I'm just going to go and reveal some eyelid over here. Actually, no. Before I do that, I'm just going to, because I don't want to edit what you drew in the eyeball. I just want to edit the pupil. I'm also going to just make the pupil a little bit more circular. I mean, fuck, the eyeball a little bit more circular. So many goddamn terms. And I'm just going to tuck it in. And by making it circular, we're just squaring off the circle. You have a lot of problems here. But this is quite a big one that I want to focus on today. I might not be able to paint over every problem I see because of time. But soon I'm going to be forcing all my patrons. Watch out, guys. Because you guys are going to get assigned a 14-day challenge. I don't know if you guys are prepared for this. And I mean 14 days in a row. I mean, like, if you're not ready to join it, don't start it, because it'll be 14 days of it. This might be for March, or I'm not sure. I haven't decided when I'm going to sneak on them with this, but don't tell them. Alright, and I'm just going to throw in a little bit of highlight out here. My back's killing me. So, how do I do this? So before we lay down the pupils, the iris, I'm just going to throw in some quick shadows. An eyeball in space, and just floating in space, has a shadow to it. And just because we went and popped this eyeball back into the eye socket doesn't mean that we take away that extra little core shadow. So it's casting a shadow. It has shadows cast on it right just on the halfway line. So we need to prepare that. We also need to cast the shadow coming off the lash line. Damn it, some of my patrons are here. But yeah, if you're not ready, if you have school, then don't join. It's going to be intensive. I wonder how many of you will join, but we have enough now that I can offer this, because there'll be enough of you joining. Okay, so I've cast the shadow off the eyelid and the lashes. I've set up the eyeball. This is what I do. I'm not eyeballing, quote unquote, the what's it called? I'm not choosing any color right now. I'm using a hard round brush, Photoshop basic brush. I'm using my mouse if you can hear it. I'm putting it on normal, 100%, new layer, and I'm zooming out. And I'm going to choose a size for the pupil that is actually pretty realistic. It's a very realistic size. We're not cats. The white of the eye is not missing. We don't need that much pupil size because we don't really walk around in the night, or we're not nocturnal. We don't have nocturnal, I guess, that nocturnal in our evolution or whatever gets compared to cats anyway. So I think that's probably why ours have a lot of white here. We don't really need the entire size of the pupil to process the light around us enough to function and survive. So we have a couple more shadows here underneath. Look at how much more realistic the face. It looks like a photograph now. And I know a lot of you think that you're bringing in all this like really, really great, oh yeah, my interpretation of realism has got a little bit of this artist and a little bit of this artist and some of this poster in my room. This poster in my room means I'm an artist, by the way, guys. And I've got like all this crazy stuff here, and I got sparkles and glitter. You know, I want to pull back away from the anime just a little bit because, you know, I'm not going to throw all the glitter in there, but there will be some indication. I'm also really inspired by League of Legends, so I'm going to enlarge the eye just a bit more. And, you know, this is my style. This is what I do. It's not enough to convince me that you should keep it this way. Your style is not, the moment your style becomes a better interpretation of the world, that's when you'll have my attention. But early students don't understand the world enough to interpret it, and a style is an interpretation of realism. Write that back. And that means that you have to know enough about realism for you to reinterpret it, retranslate it. So what we just did with the eyes may not look like big sparkly anime weeaboo dance fest, but it's definitely more realistic. And I have an easier, I would see this as a higher level of professionalism than what we had over here, which you're just painting a creature. You're painting a creature. You're not painting a human. One of these has more realism and the other doesn't. And we haven't even started to detail the eyes. To detail the eyes, all I do is I, again, lock this layer, choose where the light is coming from, cast a circular light, drop dark, and cast like a circular light around the bottom. Grab my hard round and grab another black value somewhere over here. So you had really, really great shape to the eyes. I just had to fix that longness, and that longness, again, comes from anime. But you had all this professionalism waiting for you, and you had it. You knew how to do it. You just had to shrink the eyeball. That would piss me off. I don't know about you, but that would really piss me off if I knew I had this hiding under my nose this entire time and I wasn't doing it properly. It means a stronger portfolio. It means more human characters that I design. It means less of a gap between me and my audience. The gap is closed when I don't have any specific style creatureifying my portrait. It's not good. I'm just basically here to tell you in layman's terms, it's not a good look. All right? So I'm just shadowing the top part of the pupil, and then sometimes just around somewhere here. Select inverse. We have a tiny little bit of light just surrounding, like that. Same thing with this fella. Oh shit, alright, deselect. And then select inverse. And I'm zoomed in just to show you exactly where it is. I would not zoom in this close while doing this. I need to see both pupils. Okay, and then sometimes there's just a little bit of water. When water wells up, it likes to raise the value of stuff under it. Okay, and then when you're done, you still have one more beautiful little accessory to add. The only one you'll need. It really, you can put it anywhere you want. There's no one with like a pupilocam that's gonna make, test out whether or not you did it right. Where are you? I'm going to deselect. Okay, I'm just going to put them just somewhere like this, just to show that the light is nearby this way. Look at how much realism now that you have. Okay, and this is the extreme small. This is as small as you can go. This is not as, you can go a little bit larger than this, but I don't recommend it. Now that we've fixed this, and we no longer have that creature we had earlier, so I'll show you. And I'm going to keep calling it creature till you guys realize you're actually drawing animal sizes. Animal size. It looks like a Tasmanian devil. It looks like what is it? What is those? What are the opossum? It looks like an opossum. That's all it looks like to me. Look at how much was holding you back. You thought this was fixing your value problem around the eye? Let's take a look at that value problem now. You're obviously going for a beautifully, distinctly hooded eye, but there's still some sign of like a Caucasian type crease, and you were losing all of that. Lemur. It looked like a lemur, an opossum, some kind of little rodent, and it's not good. It's not a good look. And you're here trying to do a 14-day challenge of all ways to cause internal suffering. So you're here trying to get better. This is a sign that you're better. This is a sign you're going to get better, that you've tried the 14-day challenge. And yet you still have these leftover terrible, terrible habits from, I don't know, when you thought that, anime was the most beautiful thing in the world. Look at what you had. This is the kind of stuff I aspire to draw. Right here, really believable faces, and that's when you get a gaze. The smaller the eye, the easier it is to focus. Write that back, because there's a larger white space. Larger white space means the slightest little inward movement and you have a focus in the placement of the iris. Along with your other problems is this, I don't know what kind of eyebrow has like a zero gravity static float to the eyebrow hairs, but you need to get rid of that. They stick on the face is very, very oily, and they stick down on the face. All right, you have a very, very small nose. Again, really, really distinct infection of anime in your perception of beauty. And you need 7 days of 14 days of a 14-day challenge antibiotics taken once daily after a meal. Okay? Just imagine you had all of this left, all of this professionalism in your interpretation of eyes, and you were being held back. What were these freckles doing for you? They were doing nothing for you. You had clearly come to an impasse. You had come to a fork in the road, and you decided to say, hey, you know what? Fuck referencing. I'm going to try to, do my best to make this look good and preserve my style and just do whatever I want to do, but make it look good around the 14 days. That's not how it works. You came to a point where you didn't know what else to do, and you started using this tiny little ass pore brush that you thought was going to pull off what you needed. What you needed was an inherent change, a change in your inherent understanding of beauty. All right, mole rat. What other animal does this look like? I really want the artist to be scarred. I really want the artist to be scarred today. So what else does this look like? It just doesn't look human. If I was designing, let's say from Game of Thrones, the children, then this would have been an excellent choice. I'm not sure what happened to the later design of the children. It just looked like one big, I don't know. It looked like what are those things called when you wear a costume that is like another person in a story? Why is this word not coming to me? A cosplay, yeah. So when you're doing cosplay, it just looked like cosplay. But the earlier designs actually looked like children. That was really cool. But anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just waiting for your questions. Lemur, snake, monkey. Snake is a good one. Cute crocodile? You're just being honest, right? A frog. And this is because it's very animal to have no pupil. It's so funny when we have a character, dog eyes. When we have a character, like so much character in a dog's eyes when we see the white. We can hardly see the white. And let's look at that. And we can, sometimes see it, and that's why it looks so silly when they look to the side. But for the most part, animals need all of their pupil in their head. Their eyeballs are humongous compared to ours. That's because they're animals. They don't need. They need instinct and sense more than we do. We have thought. This is what I think. This is what I think. So they have all of their senses maximized. Look at their nose compared to our nose. They have claws. They have better ears. They have better hearing. Better, everything is optimized sense-wise. They don't need to communicate verbally. And when you're giving me this kind of design, I'm thinking feral animal. I'm thinking feral human. But you're doing a 14-day challenge to make stuff look more realistic. So are you going to be continuously painting feral creature females for the rest of your life? No one's going to hire you for this specific type. And one of these days, if you continued painting, you'd have realized this on your own. But, maybe after 2 or 3 years. And I want to make you realize that now. Okay. Whoops. Did it on the wrong side. So she looks a lot more realistic. She does have a small pupil. But this small pupil has made me see so many other problems, me just as the critiquer. Her head size is massive. Very, very unusual. All right. When you come to the point where your style looks uncanny, unusual, and weird, that's when you know it's not style anymore. It's just your skewed understanding of what's beautiful and acceptable. I shrink her head size to match the temple, to match the eyebrows, and then suddenly the jawline is too thick, which means the neck was too thick. This is killing me. Image size. 2500. Okay. All right. That, along with fixing that patchy skin type that you have, changing skin reflection levels. She just looks like a dark-skinned like beauty now. She looks like very, very realistic. This is very, very realistic work. But then we had this size in her head before. Okay, and then we shrunk it back. The image is shrinking in size because I changed the size halfway, so you're not really able to see it. Maybe if I do this, so you can see the real difference. Look at that. It looked like an unwrapped 3D model. Do you see why I have to resize for you to properly see the before and after? And this isn't the complete before and after. Before. After. Stop it. Stop doing this. Enlarge the nose. She needs to breathe. She's a woman after all. She's a human functional human. She is not a creature. Okay? So really stop doing this, you guys. Maybe I should save my little pupils that I just made and apply them here. Again, this one. Yeah, I think I should go grab the pupils that I just made so that I can save some time. So, how do I do that? I'm just going to do bloop, bloop. All right. Disable that. I'm just going to paint over these. So some of these eyes that you guys are drawing are actually really well done. You guys are drawing the eyeball well. But this artist here is even worse of a position. Because look how thick you made the lash line. Dude, the lash line doesn't have to be this big for you to have a nice looking eye. You're depending on all the anime right now, and you're trying a 14-day challenge. This is why I've specifically focused on 14-day challengers today, because they are trying the challenge and they have no wiggle room right now out of this as an excuse for why they tried this style. The 14-day challenge is a very specific, focused exercise of developing your realistic, your understanding of realistic portraiture. So that if you do stylize, you can stylize later on, and you can stylize minimally in a 14-day challenge, but not to the point where you have a massive eye that is taking up all the space. A massive iris is taking up all the space in the white of the eye. This is just too much. This is wrong. It's too much that it's wrong. Okay, I'm just gonna shrink these dudes. And then it's going to look really funky, but just give me a second. Give me a second, I swear to God, if you guys start laughing. Okay. It's just a human now. It's a person. Okay? Do you want a person? Do you want to draw a person, or do you want to draw creatures? If you're drawing creatures and you're only out to represent one audience type, one interpretation of quote-unquote not even their realism, I don't even know like why you post a 14-day challenge or why you join one. If you're not accepting the changes today. If you're a student that thinks that none of these changes are for you. But I think a lot of people will appreciate the kind of improvement this mature choice, this mature scaling will bring with it. See how easier it is to focus the eyes once the pupil is small enough? And in the other one, I adjusted the whites of the actual eye size. So the eye size in this case here, I'll take questions in a second. You can just prep them with @Istebrak. I'll take questions in a second. So I'm trying to square off the eyes, shrinking that excessive size that you had. And so many of you have this limbo right now, and you're all wondering, you know, what is it? What is it that's holding my art back? Do you know the way? I hate you guys. Stop memeing in the middle of class. Where are my mods? Hey! So I'm just going to start laughing. Okay, and then I'm going to tuck this down. It's like they give contacts to the portraits. Exactly. Exactly. So now that I move the eyes, now they look like they're looking up. So to cross them, doot, doot. She still has humongous eyes. If you met someone with eyes this big, you would not be able to stop talking about their eyes. You'd think, wow, your eyes are beautiful. But in a drawing version, these are the small eyes. So what does that say about what we think is normal? And what we think is beautiful. It's actually the normal and compared to what you think is beautiful in a drawing. So your idea of realistic beauty is not the same as drawing beauty. And that's why you're not improving. Sync your outer image of beauty. Sync your I don't know how to say it. What is it? Outer beauty, world beauty? Yeah, like sync your world beauty to your art in canvas beauty. Write that back to me. And that means that what you think is beautiful out here in the world, a beautiful friend whose eyes are just so pretty, you want to draw them. Those should be the eyes that you draw, not an interpretation of them. Anime should not be telling you what is pretty and what is not. Okay, because that is not human. And human is realism. Human is function. You have a bit more issues here with the corner of the eye. You don't have a shadow to the eye like I added to the other one. I'll add it now. You don't have enough shadow for the lower part here, but look at this human now that we're looking at. We're looking at a human being. Okay, it's very rough. I'm sorry for my paint overs. I have to hurry. But other problems is that you have a very masculine and kind of oversized temple line. You need to really like relax those for female characters. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. One sec. Yeah. I muted, right? You guys didn't hear me coughing. So before, after. Okay, this is a creature. This is some Final Fantasy nightmare. And though there is a role for this, it's not always the role you think you're gonna play in your. It's not always the role you think it's gonna play in your art. I'm just gonna raise the white over here. Kind of looks a little bloodshot. So this would be a beautiful girl in the real world, but this would be a girl wearing contacts. That is still beautiful in the real world. But which one is the one we want to get hired with? Which one is the one that makes our portfolio amazing? Which is the one that we really need to think about career-wise? Is your career worth taking off your contacts? Okay, so I'm just going to actually correct because I had to copy-paste. I'm just going to correct. These guys are looking up. And they should not be looking up that much. Okay, so you guys can start posting your challenge submissions, but please don't post single sketches. Okay, if you do, I'm going to have to delete them. Community is too big for us to be posting just these daily sketches. It's not allowed. All right, I'm just gonna shrink. You can post more than one sketch though, as a post. So at least 5 different gesture like attempts or thumbnails. At least 2 thumbnails. Don't post a single thumbnail up. Try something that's a little bit more populated. So before, after. One is professional. They're looking up a little bit because there's just all this white, and that's fine. And one is anime. One has more prestige and realism and just a professional attitude. And one is, hey, this is a girl, by the way. This is a girl. You should be showing that it's a girl in other ways. You should be tilting down her eyes inwardly. You should be adding some kind of slight touch of makeup. You should be trying some I don't know, some extra level of Awareness of upper eyelid space. I can't cover all of that today. I can't make her look down. I can't make her look any more, you know, than this right now. But I hope this is a good lesson for you. This is another example of how deep this epidemic runs. Look at how under-rendered everything is. But this is your day 5. But what is the most rendered in this entire image? I think it's a boy. But what business does a boy have with humongous eyes if he's trying to be a boy? Now, I can hear the outcry, but I really don't care. This is very, very specifically directed to art. And this is a trope that is supposed to read from a distance. Either it's a distance in a game. We're not supposed to be giving big sparkly anime eyes to boys because that is reserved for the female read. We're supposed to be giving some pupil size, but not extensive size. And there are many women that are so beautiful, but their pupils are so tiny, they're not massive. Okay, and I've seen girls wear the contacts that enlarge the pupils and the iris, and they look hideous. They're scary. It looks like someone's been possessed. And there was this one girl, really, really tragic story, but she died underwater, like half her body was submerged. She had this weird blood coagulation in her body. She was stuck there for 3 days. And this image haunts me forever because there was an earthquake and she was stuck, or I don't know what it was, a landslide. And her eyes were bloodshot from corner to corner. Her whole eye was black. Ever since then, my perception of beauty has shifted. And I saw this a long time ago. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Please don't try to Google it, but just trust me on this. Google at your own risk, honestly, but don't. It's not beautiful. The transfer of these is not beautiful in the real world. If you were walking down the street and a weird anime girl with big eyes and no white in her eyes showed up, you'd think you were talking to Satan, trying to lure you in with some sort of trap or something. You wouldn't be, oh, hello, you're so beautiful, I feel safe. The more of the white that we hide, the more mysterious, the more suspicious. So all of these just raise this either feral, animal, or suspicious character trope right back at me whenever I see a large iris. So stop with that. Children, I allowed that large size because children, their eyeballs are the same size, really, they grow, but children's head hasn't grown around the eyeball yet, as well as the eyelids, so more of the white is actually hidden, but it's not because the pupil is large, it's just the person is smaller. And the person's head is smaller around the same size eyeball. That's why it looks big compared to the head, which is why it's okay to have a larger pupil for a baby. Okay, but I really wonder how you're going to cope when you draw a baby beside a female fully grown. How are you going to cope with the fact that they both look like the same exact character, just one is oversized and one is undersized? It just looks like there's a microscopic baby and there's just an oversized baby. There's no maturity. And the maturity for you and for the character comes from a smaller iris size. I recently had a comment that was a very long comment on one of my critiques last week, and I didn't appreciate it, and I thought I'd discuss it today. I don't know who's out there that's expecting me to change the way I discuss beauty, but I'm not going to change anything about the way I talk. When I say, if you're trying to draw an angel, don't draw a bodybuilder, this is not my perception of beauty. This doesn't have to do with me. Nobody thinks this is beautiful. And people who think this is beautiful think of it as a functional performance beauty. It's not actual traditional beauty. Females throughout history, even let's just talk about the most where Olympics started. Females were never ever seen as beautiful when their testosterone was maximized, when their steroids changed the way their body worked, when their breasts disappeared, and when their legs held muscles that were never supposed to be visible above the skin line. So whenever I'm talking about the difference between male and female, this is not just my opinion. This is the world's opinion. And if you're in the audience expecting the world and myself to change the way we talk just to fit your personal situation you found yourself in, this is not possible. It's not possible for anyone to change the way they think. Me telling you guys that a male is supposed to have a smaller iris and a smaller pupil is because a male's head is bigger than a woman's head. The eyelids spend more time away from the pupil and the iris, and therefore more white is visible, whereas a baby's head is smaller, making the pupils and the iris look bigger. Females are not typically and atypically, honestly, meant to be muscular to the point of like a grotesque change in the body's hormones. Period. If you don't like this, don't write an essay about it and expect me to change and say, oh, this is beautiful to some people. I'm not going to say that, because I'm not going to teach my students that muscular, overly muscularized princess was a good body type for Zelda. All right? At no point Zelda was supposed to have lats and trapezius, okay? We're not supposed to see that in her silhouette. So, you know, remember that. But maybe Link has a very muscular body. He's still a boy, but he has a muscular body. At that point, you can probably afford that. There are specific male and female roles to play in design, and pupils and iris have a very big role to play in that as well. If this is not rubbing with you right, you probably shouldn't be an artist. You probably should be something else. Maybe get a major in gender studies, dance, yoga therapy, and not have to do with the world building responsibility of creating characters that read in a game or story environment. Okay? Okay. So I'm just going to get a new thingy right over here. And just a nice, delicate size makes for pretty eyes. Makes for realistic eyes. See how quickly they focus. And I have to keep adjusting so the focus looks accurate. Okay, you were so early in every other stage now, except for this. So in Zelda, there was one really, really muscular woman. I forget what her name was, but she was one of the champions. And at this point, they muscularized her, but what was her name? Something Fury. Oh my god. Raja's Fury? Rama's Fury? Sand Champion. Breath of the Wild. Let me see. What was her name? It's this one right here. You can probably see her. Even though she was this super, super muscular, heavy-duty, mama jamma Amazonian, look at her silhouette. Look at that silhouette. All right, extremely thin waist, shoulder line way wider than the hip line. But what we were looking at in the previous drawing from our last critique last week was everything was bigger towards the lower half. She has muscles, but they're not the kind of muscles we see, let's say, over here on this fella. Okay, this guy was humongous. Larger upper body and exaggerated smaller lower body. This is a character lineup. This is what I make you guys study. They're using this in like the game of the year. These are tropes that are used in the game of the year. So if you want to contest this kind of media intent, this kind of media purpose for everything I'm teaching, you're pretty much arguing with Nintendo. And at that point, I think you're your own little island and you have your own little problems. You want the whole world to start speaking like you. This is impossible. Even a muscular character designed by a AAA company, honestly, I would call Nintendo Quadra A at this point. I don't know if that makes any sense. And they're using these tropes that I talk about. Smaller upper, larger lower, even with an Amazonian. This is a completely different kind of creature. She still had a very feminine aspect to her. They broke a couple of rules here, but they still got away with it. Large head to make up for the unusual lack of curvature in a female character, which made her have a more adolescent shape. And then we have the typical beauty right over here. Very, very basic beauty shape. Okay, no extreme size, hips still wider than the shoulder size. And then another male character over here, very, very large upper body, massive bicep indicators right over here. I just wanted to run that by you guys as soon as possible before any more madness ensued. If you don't like any of these tropes, if you don't like what I'm training, maybe my class is not the type for you. Okay, so we have now synced the completion level with the irises. The iris is with the rest of the body. The rest of the head, sorry. And let's compare it to before. They weren't looking in any direction. You're so busy decorating the eyes, you forget about the role of the white of the eye, which still needs to be edited. It doesn't look like a male. It doesn't look like a real character. Shrinking the pupil and the iris really, really makes for more just instant human. It just makes instant human. Urbosa, yeah, sorry, Urbosa. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna merge that down and move on to a couple of the other ones. This one is very, very extreme. Looks like that exact photograph of that poor girl. May she be frolicking in heaven right now. Okay, so I'm just fixing this. I'm going to fix the eyeball shape in just a second, because it's usually, and this is something I do with my students, when they're having trouble with the eyeball shape, I forbid even the painting of a pupil and an iris. I tell them, we're not painting, just like I delay grayscale, delay the iris. Write that back. To get better at the function of the eyeball, delay the iris the way you delay grayscale, to maximize your attention and focus on something that really requires more focus, such as the pure function, like the responsibility to make the eyeball perform and function. That photograph I was mentioning earlier, the photograph with the girl that had bloodshot eyes. I'm sure some of you have seen it, but I'm not going to be linking it. I am not showing that picture here. Just going to connect the forehead with the nose. There is a body type and a trope dedicated for muscular females. We've seen this in that one really amazing blonde tomboy. What was her name from Atlantis? God, she was just amazingly designed. But she had all the sex appeal, and she was so beautiful, even though she was a kick-ass villain. It's so scary, so intimidating, so horrifying to look at. Just seeing her charge at you. But she had so much beauty to her, and that's because they preserved her hormone count, I guess. They preserved exactly what her gender was supposed to be for the sake of the story. She could have been a lesbian, nobody cares, it's nobody's business. But her hormones were intact, and the fact that she was meant to be a female, she was meant to be a strong female character, which they didn't have much of back then when I was growing up in Disney. She looked like she was in charge. What was her name? Helga. God, even her name is perfect. Right, so there is a way to make characters look masculine and still keep them beautiful. Not because I'm Istebrak and I like a certain kind of trope, but universally. It has nothing to do with me. It's universal rules. Believe it or not, you guys, it takes a woman and a man to make a baby. I mean, nowadays, God knows what's possible nowadays. But for the most of history, let's say. And that's why our art is defined by history. So, click, click, click. Click, click, click. I might enlarge it just a little bit more, because she looks like she's young. Let's try that again. One step down. And then, okay. My problem with many of these movements is that they are entering the classroom, and they are attempting to change what science has clearly outlined as differences between people. And it directly affects us because we're drawing people. And some of us don't know how to draw people, and we end up drawing really weird looking people. And me as the teacher, I have to explain why this looks weird, because they've confused either this gender with this gender or this age with this age. And at this point, I am under fire, and these movements have no business in the classroom. These movements are social movements. They're movements of the street. And all of these movements are social movements and have nothing to do with scientific movements. The moment we have one, I will start teaching it. The moment we have a scientific movement. But if you have any more comments regarding this, don't talk. Don't say anything, because it has nothing to do with the classroom. Okay, so I'm just gonna focus this a little bit more. I'm not gonna teach a trope, only one kind of gender fluid trope to my students. This is not gonna happen ever, ever. So stop your crusade. Okay. And I'm just raising this so they look a little bit more. I mean, her eyebrows are really what are making her look shocked. So I'm trying to make up for what her eyebrows are doing with her eyes, which is a bad idea because it's the same thing as, you know, resting on one subject to make up for the lack of another, which is what this whole lesson is about. All right. And lowering the eyebrows just a touch. Now she looks like the lead actress from Split, doesn't she? She has that very, very same kind of mouth-nose ratio. And that high eyebrow. And then again, for some reason, the large pupil makes you guys draw this humongous head. You want to know why? What is... Anyone can take a guess at this. It's easy to guess why this happens. Why does the large pupil make you guys draw a large head? What is it that your brain is telling you to do, and why is it telling you to do it? Anyone? This is a moment of revelation even for me. Right, look at how much realism you had. The nose is a little bit low. Okay, and then I'm moving that down. More capacity for the eyes, for the eyeballs. Anime, no. It's a big aha moment. Childlike, exactly. Babies, exactly. Because large pupil equals large head of the baby, exactly. The artist for this has this. They you know, have this storage in their brain, and once we fixed the eye, what happened? You know, we noticed that the head was actually pretty big to compensate for the unusual read we were getting. Just fixing this value sharing over here. You have contrast problems. I can't address those today. I've covered them before in other critique hours, but just look like a really sad baby. Okay, high, innocent, kind of confused eyebrows before the baby learns how to express emotion. They don't really use their eyebrows. They learn at about 2 years old or something, maybe 1.5. That high eyebrow, you didn't have a person yet. A baby's not a person yet. A baby is just a larva. It's just a big, cute creature that needs to survive. Because, unfortunately, women can't carry around a full-grown 5-year-old, you know, born with a personality and all. When your subconscious knows better than you. Yes, your brain is telling you to size up the head to maintain childlike proportions. Exactly. It's instinctual. Exactly. So any questions at all? Do you think they didn't make the Lynx face masculine enough? To me, he looks really feminine or like trans or something. I think so. I agree, Abby. I think a lot of moments he just looked like Zelda wearing a Link costume. I think they made him look too cute. But there is a problem with having him that zoomed out when he looks toward you. When you're zoomed out, the camera in the game and Link is turning around, you just aim the camera at him instead. He won't read that well. He'll read like an adult. So anime is very different because anime, it still looks masculine because compared to a teenager, anime adult eyes are really small, and if you use those on something intended to be a teenager, they'll look like a really short little person that is an adult. So I think I agree with the whole trends. Like it looked like a female wearing a costume, but it did not. They had no other option. They might have shrunk it just a little bit, but I think they had like presets and templates that they had to use. I don't know. They had a variety of characters in there. Maybe they could have shrunk it just a little bit, but I think they were going for some sort of mute, androgynous, male or female can play this character type deal. And he doesn't talk much, and so they've kind of kept him open to be associated easier with the audience. I think that has to do why they kept him beautiful with a little bit of both. They didn't really give him hips, you know. So in a realistic depiction, large irises look creepy. Can the extreme opposite be true? Absolutely. In cartoons, at least, absolutely. In villains, yes, yes, yes. Jafar, Ursula, Cruella, Yzma, Hades, absolutely, Ashley. Excellent, excellent. You're very welcome, Keith. Istebrak, if you intended to show a character as animal rather than human, not in 14-day challenge, would you intentionally use bigger irises? If I was like trying to paint a character that was half animal, I would go to the extent of doing this first. You know, I would do something like this. I would just have a lot of fun. If I'm mixing human with animal, I'll just do something, you know, like that. This piece is exactly the same. I don't want to have to be dealing with 3/4 view pupils. I hope you guys got the lesson, though. 3/4 view pupils aren't perfectly irises aren't perfectly spherical. They are just a little bit kind of squished because we're halfway there. Okay, so look at how much realism you had. I probably should have just chosen all front view. So that's it for today. A lot of stuff. If my channel isn't, you know, appealing to lesson wise, if you're really not understanding what I'm doing over here, let me clarify. I'm teaching how to design, and designing requires that both genders play narrative roles. When I wrote my short story today, I am asking my audience to paint a girl. I'm not asking them to paint something else. It's really, really become irksome to see such a long comment on someone who seems very logical and rational and still question whether or not I was doing the right thing at the moment when I was teaching the artist not to over-muscularize. If she was supposed to be a hero, the angel character I critiqued before, where was the sword? Where was the armor? Where was the, you know, appropriate attire and the symbols and the costume design? This was clearly weak costume, weak illustration, and that's what I was teaching. I was educating on the tools needed to pull a read and make the wow factor present in the work. So to dignify your response and to not put you as some sort of antagonist, I appreciate they don't know who I'm talking, they know who they are. I appreciate what you wrote, but I think you had a very, very long route, took a very long, polite route to just say you're not allowed and you should not be teaching gender roles. And I think that is when it needs to stop. And I stop it here in my small community, and I hope out there people are stopping this, because it's become terrorism in its own form. I think it's terrorism. I think it's not appropriate, and it's not fair to those who are actually trying to draw a male and a female and trying to get better, and people who want to get hired by Nintendo someday to design characters. And I don't think you have a role to play in their goals. I don't think you have a role to play in what people are intending with their art. I have a role to play because I'm a teacher. I know how to draw something that looks male or female, and I've drawn before, and I know how to draw. I can be an authority in this matter. The moment you know how to draw and you have your own perception of what social cues are and what the social norms are, you can have your own community and teach your own rules, possibly on Tumblr. But over here, no more comments like that. So I'm letting you guys know that I am going to delete every single comment that attempts to refute any gender norm that I teach, because I am teaching them for the sole purpose, scientific differences between male and female, narrative and artistic differences between the roles they play. And if you don't agree with that, you can unsubscribe. If you agree with it, you can subscribe. Okay? So to recap, I'm so sorry my stuff disappears when I change monitors. I don't know why. Stupid Chrome. Go to istebrak.com to join, and then go to the little Google Plus icon over here to join the community. And the announcement is here. Please download your resource pack. If you don't download it, you won't be able to, have all the resources that you need. These are references and resources. So you can use some of these, very carefully to attempt to duplicate some of the textures you have here. Some of these are actually inspirational, and you can copy exactly what you see here in your reference, like actual references. Some you can just use as a guide scientifically for how a glow gradually becomes a glow. Some of these you can copy texture-wise, just to understand the texture behavior and the illusion of texture required. If it's, especially for her arm. So these references are good for her mechanical arm. The glow here is good to show you how her eyes might glow. The bows here are excellent silhouettes, examples for how you could represent the bow. So let me see if I could, stupid. Just different kinds of bows that you can use. I think this one is so beautiful. It looks so unusual, so alien like that very first one. But some are meant to travel longer distances, so they have a wider bow, a stronger, I don't know what you call it, a convex shape, or I don't know. Some are just general texture guides, just texture studies for colors. So you can observe how there's a deeper saturated orange, a white yellow, and a very pale gray yellow in the shadows. So this is how I intend for you guys to use these references. Please make sure that you are keeping your eye on this group. It may look like a very small group, but there is a rich amount of information in these images that help you dress the character up. And if you're finding yourself lost or confused on how to design the costume, I have a little bit of everything in here. These took me hours to find, and I've really compiled everything together. It took me a while to make this resource pack for you. So please take your time and explore it if you want to join this challenge. Once we are done, I haven't finalized it yet, and we are on the critique hour. They are due on the 8th. What am I saying? Are they really due on the 8th? Yes, they are due on the 8th, so I might extend it, and after this I might choose 5 of the submissions to become a contest. Longbow, there we go. And 5 of them will be chosen by you guys, and the winner will win a bunch of stuff. If they already have the stuff that I can offer, they'll probably just get an Amazon gift card or something like that, or a Huion gift. I don't know what I would give for an artist. Maybe a couple sketchbooks. I really don't know. We'll see. That's it for today. Thank you, everyone. If you like what you see and you want to keep this community going, the Patreon is always going to be available for those who want to join, even just as a watcher. I am aiming for 1,000 patrons. Maybe over a couple of years it'll happen. But just as a watcher is enough to kind of give back and keep these challenges coming. I do invest a lot of my time into them. And I think that's it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Let me read some comments. I agree. Like, socially, I would agree with the person, but Istebrak's classes have improved my art so much that I've learned to trust that she knows what she's talking about. Thank you. We did a whole challenge on character roles. We did the Adventure Fellowship lineup. And we just looked at Adventure Fellowship lineup. So that challenge was supposed to prepare you for a studio that you're going to be working for, ideally if you get the fun job. All these challenges here are helping you pull a read. And a read is the most important thing. It's the render. And I completely agree with you that there is supposed to be a role for all of these. These challenges are helping you improve. And it's not trust what I'm talking about. These are rules that you can trust. You can trust what I'm talking about because I trust what I've noticed out there. I trust these rules of physics. I trust these rules of biology. I appreciate what you're doing, especially that you're the only one doing this. Thank you very much. Does she have to have a mechanical arm? Like I said, the gods gave her an arm. It does not it's not a biological arm, but I described very specifically in there. The writer, in this case, described that there is some unusual technology behind her arm. Istebrak doesn't hold back. Thank you. Illustration isn't photography. The goal isn't to make a picture, it's to convey a story. Obviously, symbols aren't universal, but they're useful, hence their use. Thank you, Timbus. Istebrak, I've been trying to improve my figure drawing lately, and I haven't been working too hard, but I've been working, not improving. It's frustrating me and making me not want to draw. What to do? Figure drawing is one frame in a greater animation. With my private students, what I do is I assign them videos, and I make them slow down the YouTube video, any kind of pose or action like punching, kicking, dancing, and lifting something. And I make them pause it in frames and draw the frames. I think the reason why you might be having a problem is because you're not actually studying the greater motion and movement behind the mechanics of the anatomy. You're seeing only one, I don't know about your name. Go change your name, Mr. Griddle. Considering I'm answering your question and I just saw your name. But yeah, maybe that's the reason why you're feeling some stiffness. They made him more androgynous so he'll look good in the Gerudo outfit. Exactly. Oh, he looked gorgeous in that, didn't he? I'm trying to draw like a pubescent boy, but not yet a teenager. When I make irises big, it looks creepy. How can I make age readable in the eyes? It's not. It's really not. Age isn't readable in the eyes. I've talked about this before. It's not the only way. Age is readable in the jaw, in the brow bones, in the muscles in the body. A man who's post-puberty has a larger upper body, larger arms. Comparing like a female arm of the same weight to a male arm, it's just all the weight is up there, even though they weigh the same. So a female arm is skinny compared to a boy who is of the same size, whose arm is larger, is what I'm saying. So it's all in the body type. So there's really nothing you can do other than looking at references. The head can be very large in a younger boy compared to an older man. A head is still very big. The body hasn't grown into the head yet, just like how the head hasn't grown into the eyeballs. Anything else? Let me see. I think that's it. I would really like to participate in this challenge, but I'm visiting family for 3 weeks and coming back on the 10th. Would it be possible to extend it for a week? I'm not sure if I can extend it. I'm really not sure. It has to be a collective decision to extend it. But we'll see what everyone's images look like, and I might just extend it, Ashley. But if everyone is ready and there's 50 people who've posted something, or at least like, I don't know, 20 to 50 posts, I'm going to have to go ahead and do it. Everyone else is ready. I might do an after hours if I feel up to it. For the 14-day challenge, should you be using references or pictures? I've talked about this before. You can use minimal pictures. You can't reference a picture pixel for pixel, but you can use it to inspire you. What I recommend is one reference for the nose from another picture of the same lighting, one reference for the eye, so you can build a face that you feel is appropriate to what you think is beautiful, but you still have the reference to keep you grounded and not create some sort of freaky anime business like we saw today. When would it be appropriate for us to use feminine feature strokes on a male or vice versa? When you are intentionally doing something androgynous, or when you are trying to make a prepubescent boy. They tend to look very feminine. And the exact opposite for females. When the female is excessively masculine to the point where she is, androgynous, intentionally androgynous. But I've seen a lot of tomboys. For instance, the movie Avatar, that one pilot, the female pilot actress, she acts like a man. She's just very masculine, very rugged, very tomboy, but she has the most beautiful features. She's still technically a female, but her external verbal character, her script character, is masculine. So you can mess around with it like that. Sometimes it's whether or not you even have a script to mess around with. If it's like a movie character or animation or comic, sometimes you only have a still image. And at that point, it's really experimental for you to find out what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. When you make a face look androgynous in portraiture, should you mix features? So yeah, the larger eye, the slightly larger pupil for females, the downturned eyes, maybe a little bit of makeup. You can tell when you're looking at a man wearing makeup, no matter how good that makeup is, because the bone structure is still the same. So ask yourself, what was the origin gender and what is the intended gender with the design? And that's how androgyny happens. Androgyny can happen on the original gender, like a person who's just has equal distribution, I guess, of gender hormones. But that's enough talk about gender. I feel queasy. I will see you guys on Tuesday, the 23rd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I might have a couple after hours between now and then. I tend to have them in the weekends. I hope today's class was nice and clear on what it is we're going for with all of these pieces. I will see you guys. Bye.